All right, hello, welcome everybody to our weekly call. Matt Ham, and we are rolling through John Maxwell's 17 irrefutable laws of teamwork. Indisputable laws of teamwork. He always has an I there: irrefutable, indisputable, incomparable, those kinds of things. But anyway, the laws of teamwork. We are on law number 10 today, which is the law of the price tag. So to go ahead and preface our call today, this is one of those that can be grossly misused in a corporate environment to shame people to not kind of like sacrificing their self on the altar of the team. Okay, so I'm coming out of the gate saying that this law can be grossly misused in a corporate environment to shame teammates who do not sacrifice themselves on the altar of the team. So I want to go ahead and say that anything I say today is not it's not coming from that place. I am a firm believer and will always stand up for the fact that you need a personal life and that you have personal desires. You've got whys and purposes that you need to fulfill, and you never, ever, ever should sacrifice the personal life for the professional life. However, when we are part of a team and when we are in a corporate environment, the corporate identity and the corporate goals are a part of what we establish as a team, as a company, as an organization. So this is a fine line that we have to dance between of being a team player, being part of the team, versus not sacrificing yourself on the altar of the team. So that's kind of the caveat and my disclaimer. The flip side of this is that people, individuals on the team, will ping pong back and forth. Some were like, I'm all in, I'm team player, and they sacrifice their lives. They work 70 hours a week, and they use it as a badge of honor to one up people who don't. And then there's other folks who just say, screw the team, I'm going to do what I want to do, and they're Lone Rangers. Neither one of those is healthy. So today, as we're talking about this law of the price tag, I want to encourage you all to think about the centeredness that is needed for someone to walk this law out well. So the law of the price tag says this: the team fails to reach its potential when it fails to pay the price. The team fails to reach its potential when it fails to pay the price. The idea that Maxwell is going at here is that for a team to be successful, there is a price that has to be paid. There's a price for success. And that's a very true statement. Nothing great ever came easy. I've shared this with you on our calls before, but one of my favorite movie quotes of all time is from an obscure movie called A League of Their Own. It's a great movie about women's baseball during the war. Gina Davis, Rosie O'Donnell, Madonna are some of the women on the team. And then you've got Tom Hanks, who is their degenerate alcoholic coach. And he's injured himself. He's a former Major League Baseball player. He's a really interesting character, and he's coaching this women's baseball team to kind of bring some fans into the stands. But they get to the point at the end of the season when they've started to kind of come together as a team. And they've got one player, their star player, Dottie Henson, Gina Davis's character, who just decides right before the championship game that it just got too hard, and her husband's come home from war and she's missed him, and so she's going to leave the team and go with her husband and go back to their life, in the Midwest, while the team is literally loading the bus to go to the championship game. And Tom Hanks comes up to her as she's packing her bags, and he goes, "Where are you going?" And she goes, "I'm leaving with Bill, or Bob, her husband." And she goes, "It just got too hard." And he looks at her and delivers this line that is just beautiful. He goes, "It's supposed to be hard. If it wasn't hard, everyone would do it. The hard is what makes it great." That is a mic drop moment for me. I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. We are in a culture right now that does not understand the price you have to pay for anything excellent or great. We have been conditioned by microwaves, by social media, and by instant gratification that we think everything we want, boom, just needs to be there when we want it. You know, it's funny. I heard somebody say this, use this analogy when I speak, or if I'm out, doing a public talk or whatever. People look and they go, "Oh, you're successful in, the insurance business or whatever. You're a speaker." And people. He said, "I want to do what you do." He said, "If you want to do what I do, you have to be willing to do what I've done. So to do the things that I do today, you have to be willing to do the things that I did way back then." A lot of up and coming speakers will come up to me and go, "Oh man, you're traveling over here, you're speaking to this company, you're getting paid, whatever to go do this, and I want to do what you do." And I said, "Well, start by speaking at a Rotary Club on a Tuesday afternoon for a 3-hour car ride to get there for free, because that's what I did 5-6 years ago, and built up that repetition, and got to the point where was able to give a TED talk, was able to start doing some corporate consulting, was able to start doing some keynote addresses, was able to start doing some conferences and so forth. And then it evolves into this thing that we do now, that I love, and that people who are in that arena, they like to do that, but they're not willing to go. I mean, the first talk I ever gave, one of the first talks I ever gave, was to a mom's group in the basement of a church on a Monday morning at 8 a.m. It was a MOPS group of mother of preschoolers or something like that. And, it was just really awkward because I'm a guy speaking to a room full of moms. I didn't know what to tell them, but they wanted me to speak about my book that I was writing. And so anyway, I'm trying to circle all this up. The law of the price tag says that the team has to be willing to pay the price. The challenge is we live in a culture that's microwave. They want it now. They don't want to pay the price. They don't want to do hard things. They just want the glory at the end. They don't want the journey that gets them to that point, okay? So Maxwell kind of plays it out like this. He says there are 3 kinds of teams. There are the teams who truly don't know the price that needs to be paid, and so therefore they don't pay it. They don't know the price that it takes to win. They don't know the price that it takes to sell, 5 properties a month. They don't know the price that it takes to be one of the most successful communities in, a region or whatnot. They don't understand that, so therefore they don't pay it. Then there's the team who knows the price, but is unwilling to pay it. Meaning they're not willing to wake up 30 minutes early, right? And spend some time on developing themselves. They're not willing to stay, an hour late working with a customer when, they've got dinner reservations with a friend who's in town, but they know that they're committed to the customers that are in front of them. So the team that knows the price but is unwilling to pay it. And then the third kind of team is the successful team, is the team who knows the price that needs to be paid and they're willing to pay it. They know the price that's willing to be paid and they pay it. So 3 kinds of teams. They don't know the price that needs to be paid, therefore they don't pay it. They know the price that needs to be paid, but they're unwilling to pay it. Or they know the price that needs to be paid and they're willing to pay it. So I would challenge each of you to kind of self-reflect on yourself and on the team and say, which of those 3 do you fall into? And again, this is not a chance to shame people who aren't willing to pay the price, but it's to say, hey, teams are only going to be as successful as the individual's success. The team's potential is equivalent to or greater than your potential, right? And so if your potential is limited, then the team's potential is going to be limited. And so it's kind of the idea is you can only go as far as your weakest link. And this is a massive concept that we have to be aware of. And that's why we have to work together as a team to strengthen those around us, to be clear on what the price that has to be paid is. And we've got to work toward that consistently. So one of the key elements here of this idea of the price point is that you have to be willing to sacrifice things for the team. The law of the price point says that you have to be willing to make sacrifices individually to pay the price on behalf of the team. And a lot of folks they don't like that idea because it's about self-preservation. Well, what about me? And it becomes a selfish type of ambition. because we get burned as a team. We're the ones that are pouring out all the stuff, and Johnny over here is just dragging weight, right? That's a common kind of idea. Or why the heck am I going to work, anymore? Why am I going to pay the price and nobody else does? That kind of mentality, not a successful team mentality. So Maxwell breaks it down like this. He says, number one, everyone on the team has to be willing to pay the price. Number two, we always have to be willing to pay the price. We can't just pay it some of the time. It's not like, okay, I'm going to be a team player today and tomorrow I'm going to do my own thing. Everyone has to be willing to pay the price, and everyone always has to be willing to pay the price. And then he says that the price that you pay is relative to the success that you have. If you want high level success, you got to be willing to pay a high price. High level success equals a high price to pay. And then finally, he says that the price never decreases. The price never decreases. So once you get to a place where you're paying a certain price, rarely does it get easier. You always have to be willing to grow organizationally, individually, grow your success, etc. And that means you have to pay a higher price. So a couple of quotes here. If you want to write these down, you can. I thought they were worthy of saying out loud. If everyone doesn't pay the price to win, then everyone will pay the price of losing. If everyone doesn't pay the price to win, then everyone will pay the price of losing. It's a really interesting concept when you think about teams and everybody coming to the table. Another thing that he says is most people do not give up at the bottom. They stop halfway up the mountain. So most people who quit don't give up when they first start at the bottom of the mountain. They give up when they get halfway up the mountain, because it's that point they go, I'm not willing to pay the price anymore. You don't magically end up, the Law of Mount Everest, if we go back, you don't magically end up on Mount Everest and go, oh, how did I get here? I didn't have to pay the price. I was just transported to the top of the mountain. You don't automatically get to the end of a year having hit your sales goals for a community and go, oh my gosh, how did we get here? We sold 50 properties this year, or whatever the case might be. That just doesn't happen. You have to pay a price in order to get there. And so there's a couple of things, and this is where we'll wrap up, and I thought this was very practical, so I want to take that kind of approach. There are two specific areas where the team has to be willing to pay the price. Two specific areas that you can actually dive into today and pay this price on your own behalf for the betterment of the team. Number one is time. Everybody has to be willing to give their time. Time is an incredibly valuable asset, and if people aren't willing to give their time, then they're not bringing what they have to the table for the team to be successful. So one of the practical things that he challenges people to do, this is stuff we've talked about before, he says map out your ideal day and map out your ideal week. He actually breaks it down. If you can see this, those are on the camera here. He actually breaks it down, and it's actually a time slot, right? I'll show it to this camera as well. It's a time slot. So he breaks his day into hour increments and says, from 8 a.m. until 6 p.m., what am I doing with my time? Or when I wake up to when I go to bed, on a daily basis, what am I doing with my time? And if you take an assessment of the time that you actually spend, this is a budgeting idea for those who've ever taught or been a part of financial literacy. They teach a truth in spending, where they make you go back over the last 90 days to find out every dollar that you spent. And people go, oh, I didn't realize I spent $57 on Starbucks over the last 3 months, but you did. But of course, nobody puts, $50 a month for Starbucks in their budget, right? And so truth in spending. So there's a truth in time spent as well. Go back over your last week. Say, how did I spend my time this day? And what you find most of the time is that there are things you do that waste time. There's ways around this. Prioritizing, Stephen Covey has the 4 quadrants thing. There's batching, the idea where you can do 2 things at one time. Instead of listening to the radio when you're in the car, you could listen to some personal development things. We'll get to that in a second. But one of the prices to pay is time. So how are you spending your time? And so each individual on the team has to understand, are they maximizing the time that they have toward the team goal or not? I don't know what that is. Something's ringing on the computer. Oh, well. So time. The second thing is what Maxwell calls personal development. This is another price that has to be paid. There are the personal development junkies out there, probably like me, who are always looking for motivation, always looking for encouragement, always looking for the latest, what are people saying? Wisdom. They're hungry for wisdom. I've been that way for the last probably 8 years. I've been that way since I was in high school, but I kind of faded in my 20s. But in my 30s, in the last 10 years or so, I've just been a sponge for material. I just soak up whatever I can get. And yet there's a lot of people who would rather binge watch a Netflix series than actually study something that is going to make them better. Listen, I'm all for binge watching Netflix on occasion. I love a good documentary. I just binge watch a 4-part documentary called The Defiant Ones on Dr. Dre and Jimmy Iovine and the music business in the 80s and 90s when I was growing up. It was awesome. It was a lot of fun. Learned a lot from it too. But be willing to consume stuff that's going to make you better. And one of the things that Maxwell talks about is actually something that I've done. I would encourage you guys to consider it. When I was in high school, I started keeping what I called the blue box. And the blue box was just an index card box, and inside were index cards. And I would write my favorite quotes on them. I would write memories on them. I would write things that I've learned, conversations that I had, and I would categorize them based on what they were, whether it was a quote, a book I read, an experience that I had, something I learned about leadership, something I learned about humility, something I learned about success or gratitude or relationships or whatever. So that when I got to be in my late 30s and I started writing my book, I was able to go back and look categorically at my life and a lot of different experiences. And many of those experiences are actually stories that I had recorded that I was able to use in my book. And so it's really interesting to see that. But I would tell you all to have kind of a go-to list of materials that you are willing to consume that encourage you, that inspire you, that teach you, that give you more wisdom. And that is a price that you need to pay for success. You have to be a constant learner, constantly growing, constantly moving in a positive direction. So again, the law of the price tag, a team to be successful has to be willing to pay the price individually and then as a group. It can't be a selfish pursuit. We all have to be in on that. We all have to be willing to pay the price. And two key areas to focus on in this are your time management as well as what you are consuming. You have to be willing to pay the price in your time management and then with what you're consuming to make sacrifices, to set aside things that aren't moving you toward the team goal so that the team can reach its fullest potential. So that is the law of the price tag, law number 10 in John Maxwell's 17 Laws of Teamwork. We'll be back next week with law number 11. Many thanks to all of you who jumped on the call today. See ya.